This year has not been easy for the average altcoin investor. Yes, we had Zcash, yes, we had Pippin, but Kaspa, the hope for many, has been going down as the majority of the market did. The question is this potentially a buying opportunity? Are we going to see a turnaround in 2026? We're going to look at the data most people aren't considering. We're going to look at the blockchain data to see where Kaspa might be going from here. Now, the attention on Kaspa is relatively low. I published a video on the asset 1 month ago, and that video underperformed the average video on this channel. The average video is shown here as this area in gray. And it is no surprise that there's less and less attention on KAS. Simply because people don't really like to look at their negative balances. Whenever an investment is bought and that investment goes down, in general, attention tends to go down as well. Now, what we see here, that's a long-term chart of Kaspa relative to the altcoin market. That's on a logarithmic scale. And it shows us that for more than a year, Kaspa did worse than the average altcoin. Altcoins in general didn't do that well, but from the top at the end of July 2024 to today, Kaspa even underperformed the average alt by 75%. Now let's have a look at the relative performance to Bitcoin. That's this chart that has already peaked in November of 2023. So more than 2 years of underperformance, and the underperformance is even more significant, minus 86%. And so everybody was so excited in the early days. It looked like the technology, the more scalable way of doing transactions, of potentially solving the trifecta dilemma, right, of security, of scalability, and of decentralization. It seems to have been solved with Kaspa, but it doesn't really reflect in the price anymore. Now, what's a potential explanation for the recent underperformance? One of them might be that a lot of the new KAS that had been issued over the years now gradually get sold off. There was quite a bit of token inflation in the early days, but now that inflation is coming down, which could potentially support the price again. Have a look at the number of circulating KAS tokens over time, or KAS coins, if you want it to be more exact. We're currently at 26.8 billion. And that will go up in 1 year to 27.7 billion. That's a growth rate of roughly 3%. Now, within the altcoin market, that's actually not too bad. Most altcoins have a higher inflation rate than that. Of course, compared to Bitcoin, that's still not that great. Bitcoin inflates by 0.85% per annum, and that will get cut in half in April of 2028. But still, it's not the inflation rate that can explain that much of an underperformance versus Bitcoin over the last 2 years. Again, that was 86% from the peak to the current levels. Unfortunately, the analytics on Kaspa Explorer show nothing right now. I wanted to see how many active addresses are there, how many transactions are made on the blockchain, how much adoption is there really. But unfortunately, Kaspa Explorer doesn't show anything. Now, if you do have a great website that shows actual on-chain usage, then feel free to comment that link directly down below and I will make a follow-up video. By the way, if you so far enjoy this content and you don't want to miss future videos, then feel free to subscribe. I publish videos regularly over here. For now, we have to work with what we got. For example, the largest addresses on Kaspa are centralized exchange addresses: Maxi, Gate.io, Bybit, Qcoin, Uphold, and Kraken. And so that explains where the trading really happens. That explains that market makers might currently offload some exposure if there is not enough trading volume. Because that's how market makers operate, right? They make money on trading fees. If there's very little attention on crypto, then risk on assets tend to get sold off. Have a look at the trading volume. It's all on centralized exchanges, the exact same centralized exchanges we have seen in the wallet overview, but it's very, very low. It's only 2 million in the last 24 hours. That's on the spot exchange. Now, there is a bit more trading volume on the bets on the price, on the perpetual futures. So we do have some leverage in the asset. More on that in a second. I found 2 Kaspa related decentralized finance applications. One of them is Kaspa Finance. Unfortunately, the TVL here is extremely low. Another one is Kaspa.com, defi.kaspa.com. Over here, the TVL is also extremely low, so there's not much capital in the platform at all, 65k. We can also see how the trading volume is extremely low. It has been relatively high upon launch, but now it's just a few $1,000s of transactions per day. It's pretty much dead. And so really what drives the price of Kaspa now is the bets on Kaspa. It's not direct trading on the chain. It's not direct trading off the spot market. It's bets on the price. It's the perpetual futures. Unfortunately, on the 10th of October, we also saw a lot of long speculative money getting liquidated. People that were betting on rising prices of Kaspa lost their money. 15 million worth of liquidations on the 10th of October. We see this for many altcoins, but it did have a long-term effect on the Kaspa price. Have a look at the funding rate for Kaspa on the perpetual futures before the 10th of October. It tended to be clearly positive. And since that 10th of October, the funding rate tends to be lower. In other words, many people that were very bullish on Kaspa, they were betting on rising prices, they got washed out of the market. They are not coming back. All of that perpetual future demand is gone. Now here's that 10th of October flash crash. The average altcoin on that day lost 47%. Kaspa lost a bit less, 38%. But still, with all of those liquidations, we see how the price cannot recover anymore. What we see here in green, that's the open interest. So how many bets are currently made on the Kaspa price using the bets, using the perpetual futures? Prior to October 10th, we were at roughly 200 million. Now we are only at 50 million. And after that crash, we are really not recovering in the short-term speculative interest in Kaspa anymore. And that was a good source for a supporting price. There is some correlation between perpetual futures and the spot price. Whenever there's less trading and less bets on the perpetual futures, the spot price tends to also go down. Trading volume still stays somewhat stable. Again, that's on the perpetual futures. That's not directly on the applications. But really, I do not like this long-term trend. If we talk about the future of Kaspa in the next year, I don't really know what should break this overarching trend. It's probably not the usage of the chain. Could we potentially, for a few weeks, outperform Bitcoin by up to 66% or so? Possibly. We would still be within the regular trading range. But are we going to break out of that trading range? I don't know why we should. I don't see any data point that would hint towards a sudden reversal of the momentum. And that's Kaspa relative to Bitcoin. And that's in the context that the overall altcoin market is struggling and it's probably not going to recover anytime soon, given that all of those tokens are bought by the retail investor. They're not necessarily bought by Michael Saylor or by Wall Street in general, right? This is normally retail driven. And Kaspa, I believe, is still small enough to be rather retail driven. There's a good chance that your portfolio unfortunately looks like this. There's a reason for that. The altcoin market got crushed this year. And it was all those influencers that get money from those projects to sell you those altcoins. That's why you are in losses. The fundamental problem is the conflict of interest. The influencers get money, they talk positively about a project, but they might not even invest in that project themselves. They maybe get a token allocation that they then afterwards sell. I've not seen a single influencer on YouTube that's actually willing to share their own data, that's willing to share how they are trading, how they are outperforming just buying and holding Bitcoin. Because obviously the vast majority of altcoins does not outperform Bitcoin. Now I try to be different on this channel. I don't just share my own data of my own trading. I'm getting into the ring, trade for the members of this channel, and everybody can participate. So in July of this year, we started a premium capital pool. And every annual subscriber of the community had the option to invest. And while Bitcoin fell by almost 25%, we made 17% in gains. And it's not just the delta that I like, it's also the very low correlation. As in, when we went sideways, we made money. When we went down, we just lost a little bit. But in general, the strategy has very little correlation. It's very different to the general market where everything goes down, everything goes up at the same time. When prices are going up, it's not that hard to find winners. When prices are going down, it's much harder to generate profit. I want to share the data in a bit more detail. So the average depositor, by the way, we had several millions worth of deposits. The average member deposited 17.6K at the end of the 5-month period. That turned into 20.3K, so an average profit of 2.7K, which equates to 13.4%. Now, after a 10% fee, that ends up at 12%. Now, 13.4 is different to 17.3 that I showed over here. And that's because a lot of members first waited before depositing. They didn't enter on day one. They first wanted to see how some profit got generated. And because of that delayed exposure to that capital pool, the average return is lower compared to the return if you started on day one. But of course, the real number that matters more is the performance from the very beginning. If we then annualize this, we get to a value of 45% or 40% after fees. If you bought and held Bitcoin during that time, you lost. If you went into the capital pool, you won. If you measure your capital after that 5-month period in BTC, then you'd now have 1.51 BTC after fees. And so those are the kind of numbers I do not see any other influencer sharing, right? Most people just say, buy this token, or I called it right over here and I made it all correct over there. But really, when the rubber hits the road, when it's really about proving oneself against the market and potentially also showing this very transparently to a community, then very few people are willing to do this because it's hard to beat the market. It's much easier to just record videos, keep yapping, pretend to know everything. And while I'm not saying that I know everything, and while I do have bad trades as well, I am at least getting into the ring. I'm at least showing what I'm doing. I'm willing to share whatever success or failure I produce in the market. Now, this is just a test of 5 months. Here is my personal trading results over the last 5 years. So this is the monthly alpha over buying and holding Bitcoin. This averages out to 1.6% per month. The dotted line over here, that's the 12-month average. Had I just dollar cost average into Bitcoin, I would have gotten the return by this white gray line. But because of relative valuation trades, because we made money when everybody else was losing, we are able to outperform just buying and holding Bitcoin. That's the hard part, right? We always need a benchmark. When everything goes up and we just take on more risk by buying an altcoin, of course we can outperform. But if things go sideways, if things go down, that's where we can see who's actually swimming naked. When the tide is going down, that's when things get tough. So it seems like you're still around. Even after all of those losses, you still try to learn about crypto, and I applaud you for that. But probably if you haven't made any money in the last year, it's better to change gears. So you can simply just trade whatever I trade actively. So I'm sharing every single trade that I do in real time in premium. That's $125 per month. And because I'm having a good day, I'm sharing one trade here for free. That's actually a premium trade, which is Pudgy Penguins relative to Solana. So you're going short Pudgy Penguins, you go long Solana, and just trading this long-term trend. And if you're making money with that trade, feel free to reinvest this into premium if you don't want to make the jump yet. But Pengo is one of those highly inflating tokens, and it still has a lot of room to fall, especially if the market overall continues to suffer. But then, of course, if you don't want to do the active trading part, you can also join the next premium capital pool where the trades will be executed automatically. This time it will not just be 5 months, but 12 months of trading. There is the manual route. There are several tutorial videos on how to set up all those positions. It explains how to make money when Pudgy Penguins continues to fall, how to have proper risk management in place, and how to execute everything manually. But if you don't want to go the manual route, then instead of subscribing monthly, you can subscribe yearly. Now, currently this is still crossed on the website. This will get updated very soon. The next copy trading vault will launch in January of 2026. And so feel free to join. It's 10 months of premium, right? It's $1,250. You can also just start off with the monthly subscription and then switch over to yearly afterwards. But if you want to start out with yearly directly, again, if we are able to keep the current returns, which of course is a big if, right? Nobody knows if this rate of return will stay. But if this 5-month test is representative of what's going to happen in 2026, then the break-even point for premium with the $1,250 $50 is an investment of roughly $3,000. So you don't necessarily have to go in with 17K, right? Once you go in with a bit over 3K, you already have all of that content for free. And it's not just tutorials, there's also premium updates. There's also various on-chain tools, etc., to help you improve your crypto game. If it's the very first time here, feel free to give this a like. It will help the channel grow. Feel free to also subscribe. I publish videos regularly. There's a link to Premium popping up here on the screen. Just click on that. It will lead you to the website. See you next time on YouTube or see you on Premium. Cheers.